The colossal Olmec heads are perhaps the most famous objects known from the Olmec world. We do have 4 that were recovered from Laventa, and we'll take a look at those in a moment, or at least one of them. We have a total of 17 of these heads which have been found. They range in height from around 5 feet to around 12 feet, and that would mean 5 to 20 plus tons apiece. They are made of basalt, which is a hard, dense, very massive stone. The closest site where basalt could be obtained was 60 miles away, which tells us automatically the Olmec were putting a great deal of effort into creating these large-scale heads. We do know from the remains at the quarry site, let's take a look at another sample. Here we go. The slide that we're looking at on the left is from the earlier site of San Lorenzo, as well as the last head. The slide that is on our right is a slide that did come, the head itself did come from Laventa. We can tell from an unfinished head that was left at the quarry that that's where the heads were carved, and then these heads were taken by raft along the water, and then when they got close to shore, and we're talking moving them 50, 60 miles, they were dragged and probably rolled using rollers to get them to the site. Regardless of the method, there would have been a staggering amount of labor. And what that means is that it was also a stratified society, so that there was someone at the top who could command the labor force to create these images. At Laventa, there are 4 of them facing outward, and it has been suggested that they may indeed have functioned as kind of guardian figures. The images themselves are of human faces, male faces. They wear helmets or headdresses. They have rather puffy faces, but flattened features, and I'd like you to think about that. The nose is flattened. The figures have relatively thick lips, but the lips hug the surface of the object, as do the ears. You can tell the figures apart. They do seem to be portrait-like, if not exact portraits, and the headdresses vary one from the other, so that we suspect that these are intended to be specific individuals. Okay, the question, of course, is what were they made for? What was worth investing this much labor into? And we have no writing from the Olmec, at least traditional writing, but we do have some ideas that we might be able to apply to these. It's been suggested that these are depictions of elite rulers, and we do believe that the Olmec kings were considered to be divine. So we have, in the time of the Olmec, we think a beginning tradition of divine kingship. So these heads then depict divine beings, but also divine beings who were actual human rulers. The headdresses that they're wearing are sometimes referred to as helmets, and there are certain jobs that Olmec rulers and later Mesoamerican rulers had to engage in as well. Those included fighting on the battlefield, so the helmet could certainly apply to that. In addition to that, other people wear helmets, and those are athletes. So it is quite possible that these heads represented Olmec kings who were considered to be divine, who also were warrior kings, and who also engaged in the ritual form of the ball game. This is figure 26 in our textbook. It is a colossal head that comes from Laventa, and it is typical, following essentially the rules of colossal heads. It is portrait-like, and it also, if you look right up here, in these large bands that run across the top of it, one on each side, bilateral symmetry. Those originally were carved with a design suggesting the talons of a raptor, probably the harpy eagle, and what that would do is imbue this particular ruler with the strength and power of the harpy eagle. So we have enough evidence to suggest indeed that these are divine kings, and kings with incredible power and authority. It's estimated that it would take around 1,500 people over a period of 3 to 4 months to create one of these objects. That is me standing right here next to this Olmec head, which today is in an archaeological park in Villahermosa. I'm 5 feet even, so I'm a pretty good unit of measure, and it gives you a little bit of a sense of scale for these creations. This is one of the smaller ones, by the way. Again, returning to the very flat features that are a part of the Olmec head, it does seem like we need to be able to explain why these figures have such exaggerated flatness to the face, and I think we can explain it by remembering that these were rolled. They were carved in sight at the quarry, then brought down the water on a raft, and then rolled into the site. Anything that projected from the surface would be at risk for breakage. Okay, why would they carve it at the site, at the quarry, and not at the site of La Venta? Well, if you carve it at the quarry, you're going to be reducing the amount of stone that you're going to have to carry. If you finish the piece at the quarry also, you can determine that the piece is successful, and that will make the labor of bringing it to the site of La Venta worthwhile. As you study these heads, I think you might be guessing that people have asked questions about the origin of the individuals who are carved in these colossal heads. It has been suggested that there are features on the faces that are Chinese, for example, the eyes. It's also been suggested that some of the features are African in origin. Consequently, there have been a number of theories put forward that these were not, in fact, carved by indigenous people of the Americas. It even was suggested by Thor Heyerdahl that these were carved by the Norse. In other words, the Vikings were here. Today, we recognize that there is absolutely no evidence of contact with anyone from outside in the Old World before the Spanish. What we also recognize is that the interpretations of arguing these as having origins other than in Mesoamerica with its indigenous population is really ethnocentric racism. It reflects the view that many people, particularly in the Old World, did not view the people in the New World as capable of creating such impressive objects. Let me just show you a photograph of an individual who has indigenous blood in his veins and put it next to one of the Olmec heads. And I think that you can see that these were the products of people who belonged here, who were born here, who were raised here, indigenous people of the Americas.